the Epstein files are many different things. So some of them are just complaints and allegations. So people send a note to the FBI and the FBI investigates it. So not all of those are going to be true, but some of them are direct communications between Jeffrey Epstein and people like Bill Gates and people around the Clintons, Podesta, very, very dark man. You know, the WikiLeaks told us about Pizzagate a long time ago, and that was, people tried to say it was debunked, but that's come back around in this, in that we can see that they had code words and the FBI knew these code words.
Hello and welcome to Catholic Unscripted. I'm Katherine Bennett.
And I'm Mark Lambert.
Look who it is. It's our friend, Father Calvin Robinson. Great to see you. We haven't seen you since we met up in London over Christmas, and we had a very lovely time together then.
We had a very indulgent lunch, didn't we? It was wonderful.
We did, and quite a bit has happened even since we saw you last. And you very kindly agreed to come on and talk with us about that. We thought two of the big topics are Sarah Mullally's installation as the Archbishop of Canterbury, so-called, and the latest on the Epstein files. So, where do you want to begin?
Let's begin, I suppose, with Dame Sarah Mullally, or as they call her in the Church of England, Dame Bedpan. I was just browsing through some old text messages and emails and back and forth from, it's only, 4 years ago when I was in the Church of England, but it seems like a lifetime. It really does seem like a lifetime ago. So much has happened in the last 4 years. It's incredible. So much has happened in the last month and the last year. But Dame Sarah Mullally, of course, was a managerial type in the National Health Service. So part of the blob in England, good at managing, it was assumed. And so they made her Bishop of London because that's what they look for when they look for a bishop these days. They look for a managerial type. They thought big corporation, big diocese, bam, there you go. Disregarding the whole point of the episcopate, which is supposed to be shepherding the flock. It's supposed to be leading and supporting and serving priests and parishes. And so, of course, there are many people in London who do not recognize the orders of women. And the last Bishop of London before her was a sound bishop. And so this rocked the boat tremendously. And it seems the Church of England has been on a mission to kind of do away with the traditionalists within the Church of England, similar to what's happening in the Catholic Church, to be honest with you. Trads are not favoured very well at the moment by the metropolitan liberal elite. And so the Church of England has, it put Dame Sarah Mullally in the third most influential position in the Church of England, after the Archbishop of York and Canterbury, other way around. And so I've been saying all this time that they're bound to either make it her or Rose. I forget Rose's surname, but the black woman, because she's both black and a woman. So they could have ticked two boxes with her, but I don't think she was competent enough, unfortunately, for them. And so they went with Dame Sarah Mullally as the next Archbishop of Canterbury. And of course, she's just been installed. I have a personal history with her, which I'm sure you can ask me about if you like. But just to give you a brief summary of the installation, because this is, of course, a service that's been going back hundreds of years prior to the Reformation, prior to the split. And part of that service is in St. Paul's, which is the Mother Church of England. The bishops get together and they install the elect as the next archbishop. And during that service, there is, like a wedding service, they ask if there is any impediment as to why this person should not be the next archbishop. And someone stood up, an old friend of mine stood up, Paul Williamson, the Reverend Paul Williamson. And he said, yes, there is an impediment. She's a woman and there are safeguarding concerns. And of course, he was frog-marched out by security because they don't actually want to know if there are any impediments. But law of the land dictates that if that ever happens, there should be a conversation. And any priest will tell you if there's ever anyone suggests any kind of impediment during a wedding service, during the sacrament of holy matrimony, you have to pause it. You have to postpone it. Go and have a conversation, see if you can resolve it, and then continue with the sacrament later. You can't just go on. Anyway, the Church of England did go on. And you can hear and see in the footage that the Archbishop of York just mumbles something about, oh, no, any legal protests. This is an illegal, any legal protests. That, of course, the Pharisaical use the law against. But anyway, she's now been installed. We now have a woman as the Archbishop of Canterbury, the most senior position, the primus inter pares, the first among equals of the bishops in the Church of England. What a disgrace.
Not only that, she's not just a woman, but she's a woman who is supportive of pro-choice. She's a woman who is supportive of same-sex blessing. She's a woman who has all kinds of concerning views that are, I would say, are unchristian, leading the so-called Church of England. Sorry, Mark, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, isn't that typical of where we find ourselves in across the board, really, in our culture, into like that these people aren't really interested in the law of the land or anything like that's just for the little people, Calvin, isn't it? And you know, the rest of us, we have to follow the law of the land, but they don't really want to follow. Like, you know, when you look at this whole thing, the Church of England, you know, binds itself to Scripture. That's the final authority through its articles, its ordinal, and its liturgy. If the Church now public affirms moral positions that Scripture consistently condemns, what does that say about the nature of authority within the institution?
Right. Well, there is no authority. That's the problem with the Church of England, in that the moment they divorced from Rome, they lost all authority. And so, technically speaking, they shouldn't be able to change anything. It should have continued as it was. Of course, it hasn't, because liberalism progresses and progresses until it becomes unrecognizable from what it started at. And this is what we have: a bunch of liberals now in the House of Bishops in the Church of England who are pushing things like you've just mentioned. And Katherine, you're right in that Dame Sarah Mullally is pro-choice. She is pro-critical race theory. She is pro homosexuality in that when the church was pushing for same-sex marriage, she said, we're going to have same-sex blessings, some of which will be sexual in nature. That's a direct quote. And so that is affirming sin. That's asking God to affirm sin, which is something he cannot do and does not do. It's sacrilegious. So yes, she is a liberal rather than a Christian, but these people think they are Christians because they think Christianity is just liberalism, don't they? They think it's niceness and catching up with worldly values. They're lost. They need our prayers, but the whole institution is lost at this point, because anyone that argued that there was a sense of apostolic succession in the Church of England can no longer argue that. It's now null and void, utterly. There is no way around it. The Church of England is done.
Yeah. We said at the beginning we might go on to talk about Epstein and the latest revelations, but it seems here, you know, we have a church that wants to reshape its theology to fit in with the culture. Can it still incredibly challenge that culture's moral failures?
That's a good question, isn't it? So look at what they push back on. So the church pushes back on any kind of conservative policy that the government makes, such as the Rwanda scheme, right? To deport illegal immigrants who are criminals in our land, to deport them. The church will push back against that. But the church hasn't made any statements about the Epstein files. The church wouldn't. In fact, the latest statement the church has put out has been about, well, the penultimate statement was about reparations, that they want to continue with the £150 million that's been earmarked for reparations. But the latest announcement was that churches in London, of course, her former diocese now, will be pushing critical race theory into their sermons. They want all the priests within London to have more CRT in their sermons. So it's a race agenda that's being pushed. They're not addressing the greatest evils of our time, which are, of course, in the short term, the Epstein files, but in the long term, abortion, which is, you know, we're killing off ourselves at a record rate that is unsustainable. And so they're not addressing evil, they're not addressing sin, and when they do address sin, they promote it and affirm it. It's no longer a church, really and truly, and it's very sad, because the vast majority of people in England are members, whether nominal or not, of the Church of England, because that's just the way that the country is formed.
I think the Epstein files have sort of re-exposed not just individual depravity, but like this pattern of elite protection, and it's mixed up with institutional silence and, like as you just alluded to, I think the moral cowardice at all levels, but especially the highest levels of society. Philosophically speaking, what does this tell us about a culture that's detached moral authority from transcendent truth? Like, are we seeing the logical outcome of institutions that no longer believe they answer to anything higher than themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been a theory for a long time, that if you don't believe in God, you believe in anything. And if you don't have an authority higher than yourself, who should be God, then you become the ultimate authority. And we're seeing this not just with our governments and our elected representatives, but with the, as you call them, the elite. And they're not really elite, are they? They're scum, but they are the machinations. They are behind the scenes, the puppeteers, people like Jeffrey Epstein and the people that Jeffrey Epstein worked for and worked with. They are all above accountability in their own eyes. And maybe they do have an understanding of God. Maybe they don't, but it seems that they're on the other side. And so I don't know if they are literally satanic, as in they believe in the devil, or they're just superficially satanic, as in it's all aesthetic to them and they don't care. But either way, they're going to face judgment like all of us. And so they need to recognize that what they're doing is actually working for the enemy. And we see this, everyone's the mainstream media right now, everyone's publishing stories like, is Jeffrey Epstein a Russian spy, or this, that, the other. Like, the deflection is incredible. It's so dark that they don't want us to see the truth, that the files are out there. We're all reading them, and we can see that Jeffrey Epstein was trained by the former prime minister of Israel, that he had a Mossad handler. We can see that he had direct dealings. In fact, he said in his own words that he represents the Rothschilds, who of course founded Israel and Mossad. And so it's quite clear who he was working for, what he was doing, and yet the powers that be don't want us to see that. So why? What are they deflecting from? There's a grave, grave evil that comes from the rejection of Christ, right? And that's what it always comes down to, that God became man incarnate, fully God, yet fully man for us. And yes, he died for our sins on the cross once and for all, that perpetual sacrifice in Calvary that we partake in at the Mass. He did that for us, but that doesn't mean that we should just move on and it's okay, so all our sins are covered now because he's died for them. That means that we must repent of our sins. It means we must embrace him and follow him to Calvary, picking up our crosses, but meeting him there and consuming his body in the most blessed sacrament of the altar. It means that we have to move away from sin. So the people that move towards it and think it's all covered are making a mistake. But it's been happening since day one, 2,000 years ago, when he did come down and die for us, in that people that were the chosen people of God, a lot of those people followed him. Thank God they did. And we, as the outsiders, were grafted in with them. And now Jew and Gentile are grafted in, and we call them Christians, God's chosen people. Wonderful. But since that point, there have been a large number of people who have outright rejected him, rejected God, rejected Jesus Christ. And today they still call themselves Jews, but of course they're not in the true sense. But it's anti-Christ. It's quite literally anti-Christ. And so should be no surprise to anyone that this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing is coming from a place and a people, a demographic, an ethnicity, a religion, whatever you want to call it, that is explicitly anti-Christ. It's evil.
Whose identity centers around rejection of Christ.
Yeah.
Today. You'll be called an anti-Semite for saying that. This term is thrown around quite casually. I would say too casually, a bit like the term racism.
Yeah, I think, we used to think this was about truth versus lie, or right versus wrong, or conservative versus liberal, or traditionalist versus modernist. It's not. We get confused and we get distracted. It's always being good versus evil. It's Jesus versus anti-Jesus, or Christ versus anti-Christ. We try to be on the side of Christ. Those of us with a Catholic theology say that we hope that we are saved. People with more evangelical theology say they know they are saved. But regardless, our whole worldview is centered on him and trying to meet him in heaven. Whereas people who are against him are literally the opposite. They are the ones who create hell by rejecting Jesus, by embracing sin, by becoming evil. And that's what that all means. So everything we see around us boils down to, are you for Christ or are you anti-Christ? There's no middle ground. There's no neutrality. And so if being for Christ means you get labeled anti-Semite, I don't care. I could be anti everything, anti whatever you like. I'm pro-Christ. Yeah. Nothing else matters.
That I think there's a crossover with the elite thing, and like you're called a conspiracy theorist, or we have been, but like now it's out in plain sight, isn't it? If you say, oh, there's an elite behind things who are but here we see the connections in the Epstein thing, and it runs through Mullally. Like, I think Mullally, someone shouts out an objection, and no, this is what the establishment has decided is just going to be smoothed over. And it's the lack of accountability, like with the Peter Mandelson thing, isn't it? Where, you know, this is a guy who's been kicked out of Parliament 3 times in the Blair years, and they graft him back in, and here he is. You know, why are we surprised that
the Prince of Darkness? That's
that he's dodgy. Yeah, like he's
of
obviously dodgy. And so it makes you think, when you look at the people that are connected with this, like basically everyone, isn't it, with loads of money, like now, the thing is, right, you've got this public platform and all that, and you've been on the telly, and, you know, so you've built up a bit of a network, haven't you? People have contacted you, you know, and you've been involved in movements. You've been to, you know, the White House and Mar-a-Lago and whatever's going on in America, and you're over in America now, so you've seen a little bit, and over here as well, you've, you know, been very involved in politics. So I'm not, like, there is something going on, isn't there, Calvin? And you've had a sort of a bit of an insight into what that is, what's going on underneath, and it's not a conspiracy. This is really going on, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, I've been on the periphery, so, you know, I've been to the Buckingham Palace, I've been to Number 10, but I'm always someone that is seen as a bit crass, right? I'm blunt, and people don't like bluntness. They like to talk around subjects. They tread on eggshells around things, and I'm just straight up, no, that's evil. Stop doing that, right? So they don't necessarily like me for it, which I'm fine with, because that's just my calling, to speak truth as best I can, and I'm not very good at prettying it up. I never have been. You can see that as a strength. You can see it as a weakness. It just is. So I've been around the periphery, but I've never been invited into, you know, these places that I'm thanking God that I never have been, because it's darker than any of us ever thought. You know, we've always suspected the elites are up to some kind of child trafficking, but it's not just child trafficking, as dark as that is. It's the rape, murder, and potentially cannibalization of babies. I mean, I can't think of anything more. Can you, like, if someone said, what's the most evil thing a human being can do? That's probably it, right? I mean, I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's just so insane that this is happening.
And it's like, you know, I like when you sense, like, some of these things, you worry that they're sensationalized, don't you? Like, obviously it's deeply concerning. Yeah. Like, to what veracity can we attribute to these allegations? Can you run us through that, like the darkest allegations in the Epstein thing?
Yeah. So the Epstein files are many different things. So some of them are just complaints and allegations. So people send a note to the FBI, and the FBI investigates it. So not all of those are going to be true, but some of them are direct communications between Jeffrey Epstein and people like Bill Gates and people around the Clintons, Podesta, very, very dark man. You know, the WikiLeaks told us about Pizzagate a long time ago, and that was, people tried to say it was debunked, but that's come back around in that we can see that they had code words, and the FBI knew these code words of pizza, you know, pizza because cheese pizza is CP, child porn. And so they'd use these code words. And if you read any of the emails that have pizza in them, they don't read like people ordering pizza. They read like people who want some kind of deniability, right? So that they can say, oh, we were just talking about, like, it's that kind of language. It's someone on the internet made a synonym of kind of weed. Yes. So when before weed was legal, people used to write about lettuce and stuff like that. And obviously you can read between the lines, they weren't writing about lettuce, but it gives that culpable deniability. But a lot of it does come down to, and Mark, you keep touching on this, but the elite, because it's the language that they use for us, they call us cattle. So it's like, even when it's not about the darkest of things, like whatever they're doing with children, which they need to be hanged for, hung, drawn, and quartered. But even when it's not about that, when it's about simple things like taxation or making money, the conversations that these people are having are like, well, obviously we make money this way, and taxes are for the goyim, right? So the goy, the non-Jew, it all comes down to this kind of Jewish elite, whether actually literally Jewish or just by association, and the rest of us, who are the ones who get arrested for free speech issues, the ones who get, like, pummeled by the taxman. Whilst we've all known this, that the rich, they have that offshore.
That term that you just used, that is actually in the Epstein files.
Oh yeah. These are the words they use to talk about us. Like, we are less than human to them. And the point I've been making is that we've been saying this about the Mohammedans in England for a long time, because the reason that we see so much of what we call them Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs, but they're actually Pakistani Mohammedan rape gangs. The reason we see so much of that is because they don't see white girls or Christian girls or anything like that as human. They're less than, they're cattle. This is what the Mohammedans see within their culture. They call us kafir. It's the same with this Jewish elite, in that they call us goyim, they call us cattle, because and actually there's an email conversation about them saying that their souls are made of a better substance than our souls. I mean, that's clearly counter-scriptural, but this is a belief. So it's not just about a monetary elite, it's about a religious elite. It's a kind of a Jewish Satanism that they've got themselves wrapped up in. They're worshipping Moloch and Baal, and I'm not just being, it's hard to talk about these things without sounding sensationalist, but Jeffrey Epstein called his bank account.
It is unbelievable, isn't it?
He named it BAAL, for goodness sake. It's so dark.
Yeah, it's a sort of hiding in plain sight kind of thing when you get to that point, isn't it? When I remember when the allegations against Jimmy Savile came out, we sort of looked and went, right, he
dressed as a pedo.
Yeah, this guy's a pedo. Okay, right. I think it's horrifying. I'm glad you brought up the Mohammedans and Islam, because there are many people who say, why are you talking about the Jews? They're a tiny little percentage of people, and our real problem is Islam. That's where the fight is. So two questions. One is, what would you say to that? And secondly, how do you answer the question, what is a Jew? Because people will inevitably say, well, I've got a friend, Lily, and she's Jewish and she's lovely and she's not a paedophile. So what would you say there, Calvin?
Yeah, likewise. I've got Mohammedan friends who are lovely, and I've got Jewish friends who are lovely. I was talking to one just this morning. I'm not saying that all these people are evil people. I'm saying that the ideologies themselves are evil because they are objectively anti-Christ. And so anyone that subscribes to that needs our prayers, and they need bringing to Jesus. We shouldn't hate people. We should love everyone, including our enemy. And some of these people are our enemies. So our job is to lead them to him. But to answer your question, I hear this a lot, and it's another distraction, because yes, Islam is evil. Mohammedanism is taking over Britain. It is evil, but that's the brute force. Behind the scenes, the elite are the satanic Jews. There's the secular Jews, and that's evil too. And so both of those ideologies need to be challenged. And people on our side get distracted by this all the time. Tucker Carlson's just put out a documentary series talking about how Christians are persecuted in Israel. Absolutely, they are. But you never hear him mention Mohammedans persecuting Christians, which is also happening. And so we have to address both sides. We can't become pro-Mohammedanism or pro-Judaism. We have to be against anything that is anti-Christ and just for. Again, it always comes back to it's Christ versus anti-Christ. All of these ideologies are anti-Christ. We are for Christ. We are Christians. And so we challenge all of them. We can't get persuaded to jump on either one of those bandwagons. We want both of them gone from our lands.
You couldn't get a more radically opposite position from Mullally, really. That's about, as far away, because the church in general, I'd say, is pushing this idea at the moment that all things are, like we're all one, Calvin.
Pluralism.
Yeah. We're all climbing up the same hill, mate.
We're all going to heaven. Anyway,
yeah. And that's the most harmful lie you can ever tell, because so many people are heading towards damnation, and our job is literally to pull them away from that and get them on the upward escalator. And if we don't bother because we assume they're going there anyway, we're allowing them to be damning themselves. So
and why? Because you love them.
Right.
Because you love them, and you're told it's because you're hateful.
And we'll hold Christians to account, but not people of other faiths.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we're setting ourselves on a higher pedestal than everyone else, and that's not okay either. But at the same time, we do need accountability. I'm a wretched sinner. I need people who I love in my life that I know can hold me accountable to that and say, calm down with that a little bit. And we all need that, but we also need to bring other people in. We need to love everybody. To answer Mark's point about it being the opposite of Mullally, bless her heart. Someone asked me, what would you do if you were made Archbishop of Canterbury? This is my list, very short list of what I would do, right? I'd put a priest in every parish. There is enough money. There's over £11 billion in assets. I'd defund every diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. Restore every cancelled monument and statue. Remember, they got rid of all those statues throughout COVID. Remove every trans or pride flag. Give all the lady vicars a severance package. Essentially, you're gone. There's no such thing as lady vicar. Sack every gay priest and bishop, and then reunite with Rome and resign. Job done. That's why I'll never be the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course it's not sustainable, is it? The model isn't sustainable. It's decreasing. Like the only thing that's keeping it going really is their investments, isn't it? They've got lots of investments from the slave trade or something, and
which they feel guilty about. So they're going to raise a green levy to try and pay it off.
Yeah.
But they're actually implementing a slave trade of their own. If you look at it, they've got so much money, right? And so many assets, but they're not paying priests. I know priests that are literally looking after 7 parishes, 12 parishes, up to 14 parishes. They're just the ones I know personally. So I'm sure people are having to work even harder. And these people are mostly now non-stipendary. So people are volunteering their time because it's a calling from God, and none of us get paid very well, even if we have a stipend. And the reason it's a stipend, not a salary, is because it's below minimum wage, right? So priests don't get paid, generally speaking. And so the church is hoarding all of this money and or wasting it on reparations, whilst the priests are the ones putting in all the hard work, and most of them are getting ill mentally or physically because it's just too much for them. And so the church is implementing its own slave trade whilst trying to give money out to people because they're brown and their ancestors may or may not have owned slaves or been slaves. It's all upside down.
Absolutely. I can't make any sense of it at all. It really does baffle me that's what they're trying to do. But again, it's all part of this, disconnection with reality that we see, and that's causing so much friction in society at large, isn't it? And part of that is the 2-tier system, like that we, 2-tier care. We've had this sort of social trouble, and yet they keep pushing this agenda. And the Church of England really seems to be hot on this agenda, don't they? I mean, we see echoes of it. We've spoken about, we've got a bishop for migrants, Paul McAleenan, and obviously your mate is your favourite bishop, Katherine, isn't he? But and we've sort of gone through some of the stuff that he said before. But obviously, it's really difficult to put your finger on what's going on here, because obviously the Catholic Church, has got, the Roman Catholic Church, if you like, has got more numbers, or has managed to sustain its numbers in the UK because of Catholics coming into the country from other places like Ireland and Poland and places like this, right? Now, and the thing is, we're not worried about that, are we? We're all ideologically, we are pro-Christ. All those people are for Christ. And so, we're not worried about migrants coming in legally. What we're worried about is the illegal migrants who are coming in, who are undocumented, unregulated, hundreds and hundreds of them, thousands and thousands of them, and it's changing the culture completely. So it's working against that. So and they don't seem to be able to put any nuance on this, do they? No. It's just like, oh, migrants good,
the Good Samaritan.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable that they don't seem to be able to put any intellectual nuance on this, or be able to see that it's worth saving our culture, that our culture is worth something, or that this might be problematic in terms of people getting raped, as we've seen, attacked physically, all kinds of problems that we're bringing into our country, aren't we? And it's leading to unrest.
Yeah, I mean, social justice began in the Catholic Church. The liberals have taken it over. Now you hear those words, you think social justice warrior. But social justice was a Catholic philosophy for years and years and years. And, even the Jesuits were good social justice warriors before the Jesuits became what we know them to be now. So liberalism has infested and infected many parts of the church and society, but it started in a good place. We shouldn't have a bishop of migrants. We should have a bishop for the English. I mean, the Church of England should be a church for the English, and they are the ones who get left behind. And so you can have an argument that there can be a degree of migration. You can have an argument that it should be from Christian countries and people fleeing persecution from abroad. But you should also have people looking out for your own people at home. And no one seems to care about your average working class white Christian Brit. And not the Roman Catholic Church, not the Church of England, maybe some evangelicals here and there, but generally speaking, Christians don't give a damn about our own people, and that's not what it should be. All of the orphanages were started by Catholics. The schools, the hospitals, all good things in society were Christ-centered, and they were started by Catholics. And now Catholic charities are the ones enforcing globalism and taking part in child trafficking. Like, there's been a massive shift and through liberalism into Satanism, which is where it always ends up. It's become anti-Christ. The whole swamp needs draining.
It's money, isn't it? We know Catholic charities don't want to let go of that almighty dollar. And we've seen the corruption. Michael Hitchborn's been great at exposing some of that corruption in the US. But the other thing to say is, working with young people, as I know you and I both did many moons ago, Kelvin, and still do in the work we do now, but is racism is increasing, not decreasing. People are more racist. People are against each other. The division is greater. So the more efforts we're making to say we're all one is demonstrably not achieving what it says it sets out to achieve.
Yeah.
Well, and weirdly, you get a load of that, don't you? I mean, some horrible attacks. Like, and is that from people who proclaim to be liberals and are moaning about your conservative ideal? Well, like, what's all that about?
Yeah, the so-called liberals or the lefties or whatever, they are always the ones that racially attack me, or usually the ones that racially attack me. There are some people on the right, it's a growing number on the right now, unfortunately, for my immutable characteristics, which I find hilarious because I don't particularly care about my skin color. It's never been the most interesting thing about me. I don't find it that relevant. I didn't get to choose it. It's just how I was born. I don't think it's bad. I don't particularly think it's good. It just is. So I find it hilarious when people take such an issue with it. And they always either project or deflect that these lefty liberals. They're always like, oh, because you're associating yourself with those people who will hate you because you're brown. You know you're brown, right? It's like, well, actually, they never mentioned it. They don't seem to care. You do. Why is that? Like, they don't ever see that. There's no self-reflection there at all. No self-awareness. But you're right in that racism is growing up, and I feel it myself. It's a sin that I have to deal with myself. I'm like, England is a predominantly white country, or always has been, and now it no longer is. When I met you guys in London recently, I'm like, I haven't seen, you two were like the first English people I met. I haven't seen any English people.
We're not even English.
It's like, this is not right. It's not ordinary. What's going on? There's a massive replacement that's happened right under our noses, and to address it makes you the problem. Again, it's topsy-turvy.
Yeah.
You're someone who grew up, like, you know, your background in the Church of England, but these are institutions that you love and you believe in, like the royal family. You know, that's something that you're attached to. You've got some sort of connection with. Like, are we seeing the complete erosion? It seems like, in moral terms, you know, those things don't mean anything anymore, and it's like we don't aspire. Like, it sort of feeds downstream, doesn't it? So, you know, like this rich elite that we see, and obviously Prince Andrew is, I'm thinking, you know, the exemplar of what I'm talking about. What they actually aspire to is getting more money and getting away with whatever sexual licentiousness they, you know, particularly feel that you know, they're attracted to. And obviously then you kind of feel like it's implicit, not explicit, but that, you know, the next level down, if you like, they're sort of aspiring to that lack of, like, my point really is that we're no longer aspiring to be moral people, are we? We're aspiring, our society, the society that we're building through these liberal principles, is a society that values sexual licentiousness of, like, any sort of truck or cut, you know, whatever flavor you want to throw at it. There's no holds barred, and to be able to do whatever you want and get away with it. And that's seen as a product of having a certain amount of money and power. And it's going to bleed all the way it's going to be destructive for the whole of society, the way that I see it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, we're literally dying out as a people, Westerners, whether we're talking about Englishmen, Scotsmen, Welshmen, Irishmen, Americans, any European, we're all dying out as a people, because social norms have always been drifting. Like, liberal progressivism since the Enlightenment has been growing and growing, but the church used to push back against it. And I think we had a conversation once before about what Archbishop Cosmo Lang said to the king to force his abdication, essentially. So you can't, you know, marry a divorced American actress. It's beneath your station. And we've gone way past that to having a king who is divorced himself, married a divorcee whose husband is still alive, right? Our social norms have progressed, but the church's social norms have progressed with it. And again, I'm talking about both Church of England and the Catholic Church, unfortunately. Of course, the teachings of the Church of England have changed, whereas the teachings of the Catholic Church can't change. But we still have Father James Martin going on, what was it, CNN last week, for goodness sake, to throw curveballs against what we're all seeing, because there's a massive backlash because of the Epstein thing. Like, we need the church to rein it in. And I've seen a lot of Catholics saying, actually, I'm no longer a conservative because there's nothing to conserve. I'm a traditionalist. And I think that's a good stance to take. You know, I celebrate the traditional Latin Mass because I came up in a reverent Novus Ordo. That's the church that I always went to. That's how I was trained. But I'm celebrating the TLM because I'm not conserving. I'm going back to tradition. And I think that's what we need to do as Christians. We need to actually say, call me a bigot, call me an anti-Semite, call me a racist, call me a misogynist, call me all these words, because they mean nothing, because your social norms are liberal, progressive, and I see that as evil. I am a traditionalist. I want to go back to tradition. I don't want to conserve any kind of modernity. I want to go back to what I know to be good, true, and beautiful. And if you see that as evil, that's fine, because the scriptures teach us that you'll see good as evil and evil as good. And I want to help you. I want to be a light to you. I want to be a light to the nations and lead you to Christ, who is the true light, as we learn in John 1.
I think this is more what we need to hear much more often. I think you say we're dying out, and indeed we are. Is there, what can you say about the justice of that? So part of me thinks, isn't it awful, we're dying out and Islam's taken over? And the other part of me thinks, of course it is, and we deserve all we get. If you look through scripture, you see the Israelites scattered among the nations and facing a just chastisement for their hard hearts. And I think we are a people who will get, look at the West, Christendom. You talked about schools and hospitals and the law that was rooted in our faith, and we chucked it all off, the French Revolution, whatever, we threw it away. And then we pranced around going, we can do it. Well, we can't. And so all of the problems now that we're talking about, might we rightly say, are a just response to the way in which we have the choices we've made.
Yeah, I've been saying for a while now that I think that England has been handed over to her lusts. Again, it's scriptural, but I think it's worse than that now. I think God is hardening our hearts as a people. I really do, because we've turned so far against Him. We've turned our backs to Him, spiritually and metaphorically. And the only way to solve that is to turn back towards Him as a collective, as a people. It's no good me, you, Katherine, and Mark being as good Christians as we can be. A whole society needs to return to Jesus Christ. It was built around Him, and it will only survive with Him, through Him, in Him. We can't survive on our own. We have this massive pride as a people, this massive sinful idea that we don't need Him anymore, because we have the morality, we have the good values. We'll keep them and leave the God thing on the side, and that's why we're disappearing. Within our lifetimes, Britain will no longer be British. Right, and that's sad. But within our children's lifetimes, or their children's lifetimes, then it may no longer even be a country. That's awful. Unless we turn things around right now. Like, I can't emphasize how urgent this is. Not just important, but urgent. Unless something big happens, like in the next few months, never mind years, our country is doomed.
Yeah. Beyond
a miracle. I mean, other than a miracle.
We had a conversation with Kenny Thomas. It hasn't come out yet, but yeah, the pop star. I don't know if you know him.
You remember him?
Yeah, he had loads of hits and was Brit Awards and all that sort of thing, but nominated for Brit Awards. But one of the things that he was saying, so he's a massive trad. That's it's really it's quite an interesting juxtaposition. But I think one of the most brilliant things that he said was that the reason we're dying out is because we're failing to pass on those traditions, and that we think, which is pretty much what you just said, that we're cleverer now. We think that we're cleverer than people were, 100, 200, 500 years ago. But the reality is, without all the clever technology that we wrap ourselves in, we wouldn't be able to sow a potato or, wash our clothes, or, we wouldn't be able to do anything.
And we hardly have anything to pass on. We've got to re-find our traditions. We've got to rediscover them. They've been taken from us. They've been robbed from us.
And it's like tradition, if you see it in that sense, whatever pejorative sense is thrown at it, this is what it really is. It's the tools that we need to survive, that we hand on. It's the experiments that have worked. It's the stuff that we know that works, and that's why we pass it on. I can't help but feel that culture is going to have to take a serious look at itself, and we're going to have to step back from the world that we're building with social media and AI and all this sort of thing, and go back to learning how to sow a field of spuds in a little while, won't we? You know, it'd do us a lot more good, wouldn't it, if we did?
I'm planning to bring some Maris Pipers over from England so I can bury them over here and start growing some proper English potatoes so I can make some proper English chips for my fish suppers on a Friday. But relearning these things and regaining our tradition is important, not just from a secular perspective, but also because sacred tradition. We are a church founded on sacred tradition, and that means that, yes, you're right, that the social norms and the culture will adjust, and we're seeing that already. You know, it's okay to say gay and retarded again. It wasn't okay to say that for the last 10 years. We can now say that. Some things are gay, some things are retarded. We can use those words. But the point there is that as society readjusts and culture readjusts, we need to be out there in the forefront, because otherwise you do get to the extremities, and I'm not going to mention names, but you know the people who I'm talking about, and people get attracted to these extremities because they're looking for something traditional or solid or whatever. Like, the church has to be out there. And I think there are people doing good stuff, you know, whether it's Father Mike Schmitz with his Bible in ear and Catechism in ear, or, you know, things like that. It doesn't always have to be culture warriors like myself, but Christians need to be out there, because if we're not, what else are people going to find? And so I hope the church gets a louder voice, especially amongst the episcopate. You know, we've talked before about how it's suspected that 80% of the Catholic bishops in America are gay. Not good enough. Like, they should all be gone, and replace them with Orthodox people who are not only solid in their faith, but willing to speak out against the important matters. You know, Bishop Strickland is a lone voice right now, and I can't think of one in England, unfortunately. I'm sure you guys could probably give me some names. But who's speaking? Who's mentioned the Epstein files, for example?
Yeah, well, look at what happened, Bishop Strickland. Well, we began this by talking about Mullally's installation and your man speaking up, and them just going, totally ignoring it. What happened, Bishop Strickland? He spoke up at the USCCB. Moving on, anything else? This is what we see. And the synod. Oh, what about hearing the voice of the traditionalists? Moving on. Everything is just moving on, because it's not really about dialogue and finding something to get. It's about saying, we just want to impose X, and everything that looks like we're interested in dialogue is just a sham.
Window dressing, yeah.
Yeah, just window dressing. Yeah.
Like the prayers of love and faith, or whatever they were in, yeah. I was funny because I was watching BBC News this morning.
Stop watching that.
And yeah, why? And they were talking about women, and I was like, wow, that's they were doing everything they could not to talk about women, weren't they? A couple of years ago, they were chest feeders or birthing people. I really noticed that sort of is a change now. That, as you said, they seem more confident in going back to like all that trans nonsense that was really does seem to be dying down all of a sudden, doesn't it? And they all seem a little bit embarrassed about it.
Yeah, but why that's an important conversation is because, as you're right, as they shift away from the trans rubbish back to being able to talk about women, the secular world will try and say, we've got to get back to women's empowerment. It's all about feminism again. It's like, yeah, equality. Whereas the church has to be there to say, actually, no, let's encourage women to be mothers. Let's encourage women to stay at home and be good housewives and helpers for their husbands.
Wish we heard that from the church. You know, I really wish we heard that, but we don't hear anything like that, do we, Katherine?
No, because they're too afraid. Stop being afraid, old bishops. We don't mind. We need to hear it. I just wrote an article yesterday. Do visit our website, CatholicUnscripted.com, about the loss of femininity and the importance of reclaiming the feminine, because feminism, all it does is say, women, you should emulate men. It doesn't address the metaphysical reality of our form as woman. And if we don't, like Archbishop Fulton Sheen said, a society can be judged on its measure of how it treats women and honours women. And we haven't done that. Women are as culpable as men, by the way. I'm not saying that, but we've rejected that. We've rejected and denied our femininity. And we can reject it and deny it all we like, but it's a metaphysical reality that we're going to have to deal with at some point. And maybe, I don't know, Mark still watches BBC, boo. But maybe that's an indication.
Got myself in the foot there, didn't I?
Defund the BBC. I just got Carrie Grass's new book. Have you read her stuff?
Oh, she's very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I highly recommend that.
I think we're going to be talking to her soon. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, but also the idea of the nation, and the nation is born out of families. You know, what is a nation? It's not just a group of individuals, and it doesn't matter if you swap one in and swap one out. And I do think you're right, Mark. We've got to look at the kind of creature we are. The root of all of this is a twisted anthropology. That's what and that's where the church has to speak courageously about who we are, where we're from, where we're going. Because when they pull the plug and we're not sowing our potatoes and making our clothes and relating to one another, what are we going to do? We're just computer freaks who everything's online. Don't switch off, by the way, people.
Keep watching, like and share and subscribe. What was I going to say? I think that you know, that's exactly really the problem that we face, and it's leading to this fracturing of society. That really, this is what really interests me. Loads of people seem to be talking about, you know, like there was that interview. I don't know if you saw it. David Starkey. I don't know. You know, I know you know David Starkey, don't you? But he had a discussion with Professor David Betts, who's this guy from the Strand, some university at the Strand. I can't remember what one off the top of my head. But he's a professor of war studies, and he was saying, like, his prediction is that we're in civil war in the UK now. That we're in a state of civil war. And, you know, so that sounds extremist and conspiracy theorist, but he very academic. They have a very academic conversation that breaks down, you know, what does it constitute? Now, what fascinates me is this project that our politicians have been under, and the way that they were talking about it was they were saying that it's Blairism, you know. So again, that brings in Mandelson, and that's brought all that to the fore of my mind, that these are the people who are, you know, engaged in this process. And like the idea, what was the Blairite project? You know, it was multiculturalism, sort of, you know, like universal progress and all these sorts of ideas. And Cameron obviously carried that on, didn't he? He carried on that project. He very proudly said that he was part of the Blairite project. And we've got to a stage now where we're losing social cohesion at a geometric rate. And everyone recognises that. They recognise it. You know, if you watch Question Time over here now, this is what is brought up, and they do recognise it. But their answer, Calvin, much like the Catholic Church keeps saying we need to Vatican II harder, you know, our politicians keep saying we just need to do more multiculturalism and it'll all be all right. And I just don't understand what they see as the end result of all of this, do you? Because it's in front of their eyes, it's fracturing. You know, what is their project about? I'm sure there's a demonic influence in it that, like, you know, I'm sure that on a supernatural level, you know, the enemy knows where it's going, but that can't be the way he sold it to these people. They must think that they're making society better on some level. Would you think?
No, I don't think they do. I think they've got their own political agendas.
They're trying to muck it up.
A lot of them, no, they want to make a lot of money. They want their own personal prestige. Some of them want the fame and fortune. Some of them just want to drink baby blood and live forever. But we know that Epstein and Mandelson were running the government throughout the Labour Party government, you know, whether it's Blair or Brown. Epstein and Mandelson were at the center of it. And, you know, from getting advance warning of when we sold off our gold, for goodness sake, to all of that stuff is dark. I don't think they genuinely want to make the country better. I think it's about their own vested interests. But you're right also that social cohesion is breaking down, but we can take advantage of that. And so one of the biggest barriers for an Englishman becoming Catholic has been loyalty to the crown, right? And loyalty to the Church of England. There's this inbuilt thing in an Englishman that, you know, it's foreign, right? Going to Rome is a foreign idea. It's almost treacherous to leave behind the king and country, and in that I mean the monarchy and the Church of England. That's gone. People no longer have the loyalty to the crown because people see that the crown is a buffoon, right? King Charles is probably a closet Mohammedan in many people's minds. People no longer have that loyalty to the Church of England because it's gay, it's critical race theory, it's pro-choice.
Like it's full in with all the crazy stuff, basically.
Right. So the church is gone. The monarchy is gone. There's nothing tying people together. You're right, which is a bad thing, but that's also an advantage in that there's nothing tying people to those corrupt institutions anymore. Now would be a prime time for the Catholic Church to step in, be entirely orthodox, get rid of all the gays, get rid of all the women that are Eucharistic ministers and all that stuff. Just be a solid Catholic Church. Step into that void and invite people in. This is a great time for England to become Catholic. For the average layman, it's as simple as stopping going to that church on a Sunday and going to the other church down the road. It's as simple as that for most people. The hurdles are gone. So my greatest frustration is that the church doesn't step up, doesn't speak up, and is still too shy, embarrassed, and outwardly liberal. Those things need to change.
That's a perfect note to end on, I think, Father Calvin, because it's a rallying cry to say, stop going to your Protestant churches and get over to the Catholic ones, and bear with us, because we'll return to tradition. This is just a blip. We're in a blip, aren't we, Mark? And as you say, the teaching of the church doesn't change. And we haven't got women priests, and we never will have.
We've got to wake up at some point, as Calvin said. Like, now's a perfect time. We see all this wokey sort of direction is falling to bits. We knew it would. It's a false anthropology. What do we need? We need Christ. That's all we need. Is what always worked will continue to work. So let's get with the project.
And Our Lady's Immaculate Heart will prevail.
Amen.
So
return the dowry to her.
Dun, 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 dun. Enough singing for today. Okay, brilliant. Thanks for joining us, giving us so much of your time, and come back and have a chat with us again soon. Until then, thanks for watching. Visit CatholicUnscripted.com. And where can people find out about your latest work?
Just calvinrobinson.com. Very soon, I'm going to be launching a new project actually out here in Michigan that is going to be a Catholic media company that is going to put out content that is going to challenge all of these secular, liberal, demonic ideas and put forth a sound response. So I'm basically going to be relaunching my Common Sense Crusade, but with a group of other people who are going to be helping to challenge the social war that we're in.
Brilliant. You heard it here first. Okay. God bless, and see you all again very soon.